Yo, what's up guys? New video talking about Elunia. So for farming, we made the video on farming the Roaring Priest already. It was somewhat interesting to see that we saw some of the monsters being used actually being boosted a little bit. We saw a little bit more Belladillion being used. We saw Lulu going up a little bit in ranking. So definitely fun to see that these units that I recommended also are being used a little bit more. But in this case, Elunia. And I would say Elunia is the most recommended dungeon to farm from all of these because they pretty much just have the best drop table. And the best drop table does mean that if you check out the drops over here, we can get Despair, Endure, Nemesis, Will, and Accuracy. I would only say that Accuracy is kind of useless, but can still be used if you have a nice set at some point. Endure is not used as much, but Despair, Nemesis, and Will are all three used quite a lot. And therefore I would also highly recommend to farm this dungeon rather than a Lumen, which has a pretty decent drop table. It has the Will as well, but then it has Will and then it has three sets that, yeah, sure, Destroy is nice if you care a lot about Siege. But Vampire is not used as much. I would definitely say that Nemesis and Despair are stronger than that. I would also say, like, some people would say, like, oh, I'm just gonna farm hard on, like, the Swift runes. I think they drop in here, or it's the one afterwards. Not entirely sure. Yeah, it's the one in here. I wouldn't really recommend to farm this one as well because it's literally just Swift runes and the shield and the destroy. You're not going to care that much about, and the other two are even worse. So would not really recommend to farm those, and this one is even worse. So don't, like, just gonna check what it actually does because I'm not even 100% sure. It's Despair and Revenge and Blade, I guess. Fight runes. Yeah, it's not that bad, but it's pretty bad. So Sanctum of Fairies is definitely the one I recommend to farm. I'm gonna show you a full free-to-play team. However, I can already tell you it is not fully 100%. I would say that this account, I'm showing it on my alt, is lacking a little bit of runes. I did a few runs of 30s and every time I failed just once. So that's preferably you don't have any fails at all. But with full free-to-play teams and pretty bad rune quality, it is definitely, I would say, the hardest PvE dungeon in the game. So let's first look at the units that are most commonly used. And I think a lot of them make a lot of sense. And a few that I think make sense are not in there. And also a few that I think don't make sense are in here. So first of all, if you have those Nat 5 units, do use those Nat 5 units. That's the main thing. Riley, I would say, is a must. If you don't have Riley, that's also a question I got on some of the previous videos on those things. It's like, oh, I don't have a Belladillion 2A. Can I use a Belladillion not 2A? It's like, no. If you don't have your units 2A yet, first make your units 2A and then start using your energy on farming this dungeon. This dungeon is only if you're done with making all of the 2As. I made a different video on that. I'll link it in the description. Same as the video for also Karzhan farming. But if you do not have your 2As fixed yet, don't even care about these dungeons at all. This is just the moment that you have enough 2As. You don't really want to farm more 2As. You don't need more skill ups on 2As. That's why you're going to start farming these. But let's look at the team that I have currently running. Currently running, I have this. And that is the Riley in there. Riley is definitely the most recommended unit in there. I don't have a good Vio set for it yet with like close to 100 resistance, so I just made a Swift set on it. Is it worse? Yes, it's absolutely worse. Is Will needed? Absolutely not needed. But Vio is definitely better, and it's good to have some damage from water if you specifically use it here, and then recovery as 1, as 3, as 2. As 2 doesn't even work. I would say Royd is definitely a very strong unit in here, can do quite some damage. It's not needed to be max skilling. It is better if it is max skilled, of course. So first you could actually farm like the 2As to get Royd max skilled and then use it. It's not even on the Vio set, it's just shield, revenge, and then endure, or energy. And it's also like some damage on water for that sake, and then some accuracies up or like anything like that. Naomi, I would say, is kind of easily replaceable as well by a few other units, which we'll check out in a second. But Naomi is definitely a pretty nice unit. It does quite some damage. It doesn't have any leader skill that works for here, so that also means that this whole team doesn't have a leader skill as I want to use it. But it's still fine. You just want to go some damage set on it. You don't care about the crit rate. You just care for the crit damage. And then just get in like all of the other stats. And I would definitely say that Juan is a very underrated unit for this dungeon. He does have a Vio Revenge set. It's an okay-ish set, I would say. But this thing has a very interesting skill set, whereas he also has the Ignore Defense on the S1. He has Attack Break on the S1, which is very strong. He has a Recovery on S2, according towards your attack power. And he has a skill 3 that also gives Recovery. So, and yeah, that's just very nice. It's also a defense break in there. So there's just a lot loaded to this kit on this unit to get that in there. So let's check out the run, and then I'll also look at what replacements I recommend you to use if you happen to have those net 5s, because if you do have those net 5s, do not use those units, but I'll also mention for which I would replace it. So I would say in this team, the first one I would replace is probably the Naomi if you have a better damage dealer. Sure, Naomi is pretty nice for damage dealing, but there's other better units out there. But as you can see, the buffs that this thing is giving is also making it a lot easier to survive. So you have a damage dealer, but it's also a healer. Like I see some people use, for example, a Triana in here. Triana is just a survivability unit, which is also not that great because the final boss, which is going to do the most amount of damage, is a multi-hit ignore defense. Triana is not great into multi-hit, so Triana in the first place is not going to do all too much in here. I've seen people go in with fully like an Eladriel or something like that for revives. It's okay, but I don't really I think it's kind of a wasted spot as well. Sure, it makes things quite a bit safer, but it's not really something that, like, if you get hit on the wrong spots, he's trying to like survive stuff and then revive at some point, but I still don't really think it's that great. Oh, wait, since I never run it on this one, it actually... Oh, wait, it is fine. Is this fine? Yep, this is also fine, and this one is also fine. So yeah, for the phases, we just look at it right away. First phase, I'll go straight to boss. Second phase, I go straight to boss. If you have certain units, which I will mention in a second, I would go right minion first, which is the Balanus, and then boss. In this case, I don't really have anything that don't care too much about elements, so it's better to just go straight boss rather than trying to kill that Balanus first, because it would take quite a while. And in this case, you would want to kill the right unit first, which is the friend. So let's just go on with this. We do have the same mechanic over here that you don't really want to have too many multi-hits in here, so you don't want to go like super hard on multi-hitting. It is kind of annoying that the Drunken Master does go for the side hits at random, but he still has pretty good damage, plus he has that attack break right away, which is just quite a lot in there as well. I would definitely say Naomi is the most replaceable in here. Naomi is by all means not bad, but I feel like that there's just definitely better units out there. So far, pretty solid run, not much going wrong. The thing is, at the second phase, you could get, if you don't kill it fast enough, that the Balanus starts taking a few turns and starts getting annoying. But yeah, that's just is what it is. There's not too much stuff to do about it unless you have a specific unit that can actually counter it pretty well. So now the friend is dead, and then it's just cleaning up the boss. But you see that this thing, the Juan actually has like pretty solid recovery. Like if I would replace a unit over here, I would definitely replace the Naomi rather than replacing the Juan. I think the Juan is definitely very solid. But now let's look at a few of those replacement units. Like if you happen to have certain net 5s, then I would definitely use those over the units that I have right now. So let's check out those. I think pretty much all of them are located over here. We have Savannah, we have Feng Yang. Those are the most common two. The team that I'm actually running on my alt is a Riley, Savannah, Feng Yang, and then a Dominic. I think that those four are the best in there for pretty much never failing. And I would say that if you have any of those three, the Savannah, the Feng Yang, or the Dominic, I would replace the Naomi with one of those three. I would also say that if you have the Feng Yang and the Dominic, or Feng Yang or the Dominic, I would go for the phase 2. I would kill the Balanus first, especially with the Dominic. Dominic just pretty much one-hits that. Yen is also definitely a good option if you have Yen. I think Yen would probably do better than a Naomi. I'm pretty sure about that. But this account doesn't have a Yen, so therefore I go for Naomi. But if you have a Yen runed and already built and everything like that, max skilled, I would definitely use a Yen over Naomi. I wouldn't use a Yen over the Juan. So I wouldn't use Yen over the Drunken Master, because the Drunken Master also provides healing, provides buffs, and that's just a lot better. You could arguably say that a Bernard on a damage set could be better than Naomi, but I would only use Bernard if the Bernard is actually on a damage set, not just a pure speed booster. And my Bernard in this case on my account is a pure speed booster, so I wouldn't really recommend to use Bernard unless it's actually on a damage set. Teshar is commonly used here as well. I think you can get away with using Teshar if you have it, but I wouldn't use Teshar in the sense where you use Teshar in the same way as that you do for your Giant. So I have seen some people just going with like Teshar, Prilia, and then they use an Immensity to boost up the Teshar as Economia kind of thing. Yes, if you want very fast runs, then you go Prilia, Teshar, Economia, Teshar, and then some other less final unit for damage deal. That's absolutely the fastest runs you're gonna get out there pretty much. but it's not gonna be safe, so I don't really recommend it. But putting Teshar in the Naomi spot is, I would say it's fine. It's not the safest way, but it's definitely, if you already have the unit runed up, pretty good runes to it, it's definitely something that could work. Orochi is nice. The only thing I don't like about Orochi that much is that his skill 3 is a heavy multi-hit that would stack the boss quite fast, but Orochi, once again, similar to Yen, if you have it ruined already, you could totally use that. It's definitely not a problem on that whatsoever. Crossfeld, I wouldn't really recommend to use, mainly because, well, he's nice and all, but you don't really need the attack buff because Riley already has attack buff, so it doesn't really add too much on it. Royd we have in the team. Prillia I would not recommend to use. Like, I would just use a Royd over Prillia like any day of the week because it's just so much safer. Royd provides a lot more debuffs than the Prillia would, and he still provides a pretty consistent armor break in the first place. Odin I don't think is that great because he doesn't get to max stacks that often, so I wouldn't really recommend to use Odin. Wouldn't you recommend to use Eladriel because he's just like there for surviving and that kind of stuff. Lagmaron would not really, yeah, I think Lagmaron is actually okay. Like Lagmaron I can't really complain too much about. If you have a good one rune, it's definitely fine. And the Homunculus is an option, but I definitely do think that a Naomi would do better, a Yen would do better, a Orochi would do better. So pretty much any of those units would do better. And Juan would do like 100 times better than this unit. So that's definitely the take on it. I would definitely highly recommend building a Juan. It's super easy to build up. It's just an insanely strong unit. It does have like a lot of these recovery things in here while still dishing out a good amount of damage. Too bad that this leader skill, of course, doesn't work here. But I would definitely say that a team like this is very nice. If I would replace anything, it would be a Naomi. I have been thinking of putting an Akamamir in there or putting a Argan in there. But I would say that a Naomi is better. Also, you could put a Windy in here, but then you have the dungeon things. But it is decent, however. The bad thing about a Windy is that Windy doesn't provide that much damage. It provides 3 multi-hit, which is not that great in this whole dungeon scenario. Plus, it's also providing the shield on AoE hits and not on single target hits as much. So for that reason, the shield is not going to be applied at the stage where you need it the most. So it's not as great as well. I've seen some people use Jasun. If you want to use Jasun, it's probably the spot of Juan, but I think Juan just does a better spot at it. Things like Charlotte wouldn't really recommend to use too many AoE hits. And that's pretty much all there is to it, like any of those units. I see some people use Diana. I don't think Diana's great in here as well. Momo, I'm actually not 100% sure if she keeps stacking the passive throughout like the multiple stages. If she does, then Momo might actually low-key be pretty good for this as well. And, well, doesn't have a correct leader skill, that's too bad. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. I highly recommend to farm Elunia if you want to farm anything on Dimensional Hall Energy for any of those runes that are ancient. I would 100% say that Elunia is the best dungeon out there. Any of the other dungeons don't even come nearly close to like the good runes that Elunia drop. The only thing that I could recommend is saying like, okay, if you don't care, or if you very specifically care about cleaving, then Karzhan becomes very interesting for those rage runes. But besides that, it's just Elunia. Elunia. Lumen is arguably a thing that could be okay. I don't even know how to farm this specifically because I literally never really farmed this, but apparently nothing too crazy going on. Wait, let's check level 5. Nothing too crazy going on for this one. Maybe it's... I would say that people are just farming this because they don't really know how to farm Elunia. But trust me, Elunia definitely has a way better drop table because Despair, with the recent buff that Despair doesn't care about elements, is insanely strong. So guys, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you as always in the next one. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and like this video. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the dungeon guide archive and the video guide archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.